The original Don't Breed was a surprise hit of 2016 and one of the films that made it onto my favorite movies of the year list. To me, it was easily one of the top 10 films of 2016. It was an original property that had a simple yet effective premise. So for anyone going into the sequel who needs a reminder of what the original film was about, let me get into a quick recap before delving into the trailer. The idea was pretty straightforward. Three friends plan to rob the house of a blind man, but what sounds like a simple job ends up becoming a nightmare as they become trapped inside of their Mark's house and find out that he isn't an ordinary blind man. So here we are, 5 years later after the first movie, and the blind man is back, or Norman Nordstrom, played by Stephen Lang. His character is still as unsettling to watch, yet thrilling at the same time. It seems that he somehow managed to fulfill his wish of getting a new daughter, which raises a ton of questions, especially since we saw his plan to father a new child fall apart in the previous film. But we saw how far he was willing to go to get a new daughter. In the first film, one of the big twists was finding out that he was trying to father a child with a captive woman in his basement. And not just some random woman he kidnapped. No, it was Cindy Roberts, the woman who killed his daughter in a car accident. Well, he would have succeeded in fathering a child with her, even against her will, if it wasn't for Rocky and Alex breaking into his home and stumbling on his secret while trying to evade him. Nordstrom accidentally killed Cindy Roberts, and in turn, his unborn child. To make up for the mess, he decides to make Rocky her replacement and attempts to artificially inseminate her using a turkey baster. So that was one of the WTF moments of the first movie, and in the end, he failed to get a new daughter when Rocky escaped his grasp and made a break overseas with the stolen money she had secured from the break-in. Now I'm glad for this sequel that he didn't just decide to have him go after Rocky by chasing her to Los Angeles. That story has wrapped, and this is a new one that sees the man who is persistent in having a daughter get his wish, but that happiness doesn't last long. Once another break-in happens, and this time, it's not for his money. They want his daughter. Now at the time of recording this trailer breakdown, there hasn't been any official announcement revealing the name of Nordstrom's daughter, played by child actor Madeline Grace. Not that the character's name will be pivotal to the story, but I would have loved to refer to her by name. Instead, prepare for me calling her daughter a lot. I love how the trailer opens up and has us assuming for a couple of seconds that he's after the girl who turns out to be his daughter, the former vet running his training, or playing a game, since it looks like she was supposed to be able to secure the gun in the car and stop him from getting it. That line, "home safe," that he says to the woman helping his daughter. Yeah, I don't think so. Not after what happened last time and now. I honestly think he should consider moving house. But yeah, he can take on anything that threatens his household. This guy is the ultimate killing machine. And not just because he's familiar with his own surroundings. We see what happens when you take him away from home, where he seemingly has the advantage. At least, that's what his daughter's kidnappers assumed. It looks like the first half or so of this movie will take place at Nordstrom's home, and the latter part in a number of locations away from his house, which is good. The house was a great environment to give us a claustrophobic feeling of being entrapped when we explored it for the first time. Having the film be primarily set in the same location would be retreading that setting, and it would have lacked the same amount of tension as it did in the prior film. The team invading his home seemed to be hired by an unseen party because of his daughter, who may or may not be his biological daughter. Assuming that this film takes place 5 years after the first one, then it's unlikely that his biological daughter would be as old as this little girl. He could have adopted, but I doubt it. After failing to get a daughter through insemination, maybe he kidnapped a little girl and raised her as his own? The fact that he's terrified when one of the men leading the assault on his house says, "It's not me you need to be scared of, little girl, but the man standing next to you. I don't know who he is, but I know who he's not. Should I tell her or you?" You can see that panic in his face and his retaliation. Whatever the answer might be, it is going to destroy the relationship he has with his daughter. I really am curious what the twist might be this time around. Maybe it's not as obvious as it seems. So they successfully managed to kidnap Nordstrom's daughter and even burn his house down, leaving him broken and really pissed off. This sends him on a mission to get back his daughter and get revenge on the men who upset his life. Stephen Lang is really great at playing this character because one minute he looks like a frail old man who's defenseless, and the next, his whole demeanor changes. You see him ready to go out and unleash some hell on the fools who crossed him. And then there's this renewed energy to him. You feel like he's unstoppable. The first movie was very much a low budget film that was wonderfully shot. The scene where he cuts the lights and leaves his prey in the dark, giving them a taste of what it's like to be in complete darkness, returns here, albeit a bit different. Here the cinematography is a lot more sharper and has a more movie-like quality to it than the original, which looked like a scene shot in the dark. I much prefer the original, which takes place in the confines of a basement. But this one is great, especially without hammer toss. We see it, but the guy walking around never saw it coming until it connected with his head. Brutal. The following scene with the smoke and Nordstrom attacking a guy who doesn't see him coming is a wonderful shot. But the best scene of the trailer for me is the final scene, which is just great on so many levels. This is one scene that benefits from the beefed up cinematography. The shot and framing and the color palette is just beautiful in what is supposed to be a brutal moment. Seeing Nordstrom lay in a pool of water, waiting for his victims to come to him, is tense because we know what is about to happen to these clueless men who fall into his trap. The way he uses the movement in the water to pinpoint their location is wonderful. I love seeing the ripples moving towards him and alerting his sense of touch and hearing to know exactly where they are. For a quick dispatch, they didn't even have time to react. It's interesting that 3 of the 4 men were easily taken out. Maybe because they underestimated him. The 4th person who held back from walking in the water seems to be a lot more aware of who they're dealing with. Or he just got lucky. Maybe it was the same person who was goading him on earlier in his home. So that's the trailer, and it looks like this will be worth the 5-year wait. I know this was in the works not long after the first film became successful, but I'm glad to see it's finally wrapped, and now ready to be seen in the cinema. It looks like this time around, they're turning the blind man into the hero of the story, instead of the villain he became over the course of the first movie. This is a great new direction for his story that already feels fresh, yet familiar. It should be interesting to see how different this will be compared to its predecessor, since it's now being helmed by a first-time filmmaker. The original co-writer on the first movie, and now the follow-up film, Rodo Segues, is taking over directing duties from Freddy Alvarez. Alvarez is still attached to the sequel as a co-writer and producer. It's always a good sign when the original creative team is still intact for a sequel to a project, especially for one of my favorite movies. We've seen countless films suffer from losing the original creative team that kicked off a franchise with a solid first entry. Honestly, I'm not too concerned with Alvarez stepping away from directing this film. He's still involved on the property, and Rodo Segues knows it better than any new filmmaker who could have stepped in if he wasn't willing to do this project. This is a perfect film for a first-time director to test his skills behind the camera. Already from this trailer, it looks like Segues is doing amazing work. My only skepticism going into the sequel is that maybe this will be a case that this film was never meant to be anything more than a one-and-done story. But at the same time, I'm fascinated by Norman Nordstrom and his seemingly changed role as a vengeful hero, rather than an antagonist. It's just a huge change from what we learned following his character in the original film. Nevertheless, I'm excited to see this film, and to revisit this character, who is wonderfully entertaining. The film is set to be released in theaters on the 13th of August. This comes out the same day as Free Guy. I'm definitely going to be doing a double bill. So are you looking forward to this sequel? What did you think of the trailer? Do you think it will be good, if not better than the first film? Let me know in the comments below. Anyways folks, that's all for now. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the show. Please feel free to subscribe, like, and comment below. And hey, maybe this isn't your cup of tea, and that's okay. Just remember to take care and stay safe.